Okay, everyone, welcome to another episode of Psychonaut Sessions. This is me, Daniel Moeller, your home for all things psycho, and I'm here with the one and only, the enigmatic master illustrator, Clara Meath. How you doing? Thank you.
I'm doing great, thank you. I accept enigmatic, but not master illustrator. Maybe someday.
I don't know, man. I've been watching you work online, and it's like, I learn a lot just watching you work, which I'm actually really excited about because the way we're going to kind of format this, thank you, that I've got an illustrator on who's fine with drawing and talking at the same time, and we're going to get to see what you're working on.
Yeah.
So
to a certain extent, yeah. I'm one of those artists that there are artists that can't talk and draw at all at the same time, and then there's ones that can do it like it's nothing, and I'm like right in between. Like there are certain things I can do while talking.
Sure.
Fortunately, the piece I'm working on has those things. In this case, it's tech. It's a nice smooth inking process there. So should we switch to page now?
Yeah, let's do it. We'll go ahead and switch, and we'll dive in, and I'd like to get to know you a little bit. So I just so you know, and we'll get into the creation of it. But right now I am holding a Mother 47, which is what I picked up from you at Fountain City Comic Con. I passed it to my wife, just so everybody knows. I passed it to my wife last night because every time I do one of these interviews, she's always wants to read who I'm interviewing. And she read it last night before bed, and then she handed it over to me. I'm like, what did you think? She was like, damn. And I'm like, I know. That was some good shit. So
that's wonderful that she's so supportive too. I love hearing that.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be happy unless I was with someone that like we could jive, and support each other's stuff, and that she's at least somewhat into the stuff that I'm into, I mean, I'm very lucky. I'm a lucky man. That's all I'm going to say.
You are.
So,
well, congratulations. I'm also very glad. I'm very honored she liked it. Tell her thank you.
Oh, I will. So I'm actually going to kind of stop putting the highlight on me. And let's take this all the way back. I know some people are like, starting at, figuring out how someone got started in the comics or even the interest and everything is, kind of the run-of-the-mill question. But
right.
I don't have as like strong of a friendship with you as I have with some of the other people that I interview. So I do really want to kind of dive in a little bit. So where did the interest come from? Let's go back to little Clara.
Little
baby Clara. And are you one of those kind of like me and some others where just like one of the first things you did ever was just pick up a pencil and start drawing before even talking? Or, did this something that kind of develop over time? And did you always have a strong interest in comics and that style of illustration?
Yeah.
Kind of get into that a little bit.
Okay. So I sort of have a bit of a backward situation from the stories I usually hear when people are talking about this. Can you hear okay, by the way? My mouth is faced away from the microphone.
I think you're coming through great.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I drew a lot as a kid, and I was, considered, quote unquote, the gifted kid as far as drawing. But there was a part of me that always resented it because in my mind, artists were pretentious people who wore berets and lived in Paris, and I'm a practical person. I like to do things, efficiently and live simply, and I'm that kind of person. So I always kind of avoided it, but ultimately it was very childish of me to feel that way about it. But that feeling led me to give up drawing for towards the end of middle school, all the way through my teens. I never really read comics. I read a lot of Calvin and Hobbes, but I was never really a big comics fan. And I'm not going to lie, I'm still not much of a comics fan.
Mm-hmm.
But I had my sort of quarter life crisis after going to 2 different colleges and not really, finding someplace I wanted to be or something I wanted to study. And I had just a sort of, genuine soul searching moment where I asked myself, like, what is the one thing you're always kind of doing no matter what else is happening? And it's like, it was storytelling. In the back of my mind, I was always storytelling. I was that nerdy kid that was always making up stories. And I learned pretty early on, like, don't just go up to people and start telling them your narratives. Nobody wants to hear that. I was that kid. I was like, well, I made up a story about a squirrel and it did, and they would become these grand sweeping epics.
Right.
But I was literally in my 20s before I fully figured out that like not everyone does that. Like I thought it was super normal. But yeah, ultimately what happened is I just had to ask myself, like, what is your skill set? What can you get good at if taught? And what do you want? And it was, I want to storytell, and I have the capacity to get good at drawing. So based on that, I looked up schools in the United States that teach comics as a major, or colleges that teach comics as a major. And I ended up going to SCAD Atlanta, one of the few that does that. And that was how I got started in comics. It was this very sort of practical, objective sort of checklist. And, I love the medium now, and I love it at its best, but I'm still not, what you'd call a comics fan.
Right.
I did it. That's what I mean by having done it in a very backwards way,
Right. No, I get that. So what were some of your earlier illustration or really storytelling influences, like even outside? Because I feel like the kind of artwork that you do, that I do, it's outside. Like when we call something comics, that seems
right.
almost like a very specific thing. And I'm the same way in terms of, when I went to school, I focused both on an English major and art because it was all about telling stories for me as well. That's
right. Right.
Like whenever like in terms of like D&D and fantasy and stuff, I always related to the bard. Like it was
right.
So that's very important to me. What were your earlier influences? Was it music specifically in terms of storytelling? Was it illustrative books or what?
That's a good question. I mean, like I said, I definitely read, I didn't really read comics, until recently, but I read a lot of Calvin and Hobbes as a kid. And looking back at that now, I realize just how, when you're a kid, you don't realize that you're watching a master at work, Yeah. You're just like, oh, this is interesting. This tickles my brain in all the right ways. And I don't understand why, but I'm a child, so I'm not going to ask,
Mm-hmm.
And looking back at this from this vantage point, having now been trained, having some knowledge and experience, it really has fully sunk in how incredible Bill Watterson's work was. Just absolutely unbelievably high quality work. And I tell this story a lot, but I think it bears repeating. One of the things I used to do, because, we had like one volume of Calvin and Hobbes. We didn't even have like, a lot of them. So they were basically all memorized. I would just go through them all again and again and again and become really familiar with them. And one of the things I used to do was like cover up different lines on the face to see how it changed the expression. And to this day, I know that had a significant influence on how I now think about drawing faces and the versatility a single line can carry.
Yeah. He was a genius, or is. I mean, Calvin and Hobbes.
The genius persists.
Yes, Calvin and Hobbes is one of those master works that, if I only had a select set of books to go with me, like one suitcase on a desert island.
Yep.
Most definitely huge. So you said that you had kind of dove into, you said you had other college experiences before SCAD. What?
Mm-hmm.
And so what was that experience? Did you just go to college and not know what you were looking for, or were you trying other venues of art curriculum, or what?
Yeah, no, it was never art. It wasn't art the first couple of times. It was like, writing or media or whatever. They were a couple like mixed majors in like liberal arts schools. And I think if I had just been honest with myself at that point, I would have known what I wanted and what I was looking for. But, I couldn't be, when you're that young and you bottled up what you actually wanted. I think I just didn't want to make that choice to live this life, because it's a hard life. And, the starving artist term is not a lie. I've been pretty hungry, and I've had to rely on the generosity of many other wonderful people who've believed in me. And I think there was just, I think I was afraid of that. I think I wasn't willing to lean into that at the time. So yeah, I think that's what did it. But even then I knew I wanted to be in entertainment to some capacity. I wanted to be in something that involves storytelling or writing. And yeah, like my first real ambition was to be a novelist, but that's arguably even harder to pull off than being a professional artist, you know? So
Yeah.
at least successfully anyway.
Yeah.
Not all Stephen King.
Right. Yeah. No, I've tried. It is it's a really hard market out there, the world of the literary world. And I actually ended up having to kind of go the nonfiction route. And that's where I actually ended up finding a publisher that would carry me. But getting fiction published is a nightmare. It's so, for me anyway, it's just been so hard to navigate that.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. And again, those were the kind of horror stories I heard for, like, you know, when you're a child, people try to give you reasonable expectations, not so much dream crushing, but like, you know, they're always like, you know, it's really hard being an artist. And I was a little chicken, because when you're young, the world is very scary. So I thought I'd take a safer route. And I finally, in my mid-20s, came around on the reality that I should probably just do what I want. I'll be way happier.
Right. So, okay, so for those that don't know, SCAD is Savannah College of Art and Design, but they have various campuses, right? And Atlanta has the sequential art program, and that's where you landed, correct?
That is correct.
So that's exactly what, if I would have really followed through with my dream, that's exactly what I would have. That's Savannah College of Art and Design sequential art program. Even more so than the Joe Kubert School was what I eyed as like, this seems right up my alley. And I didn't have that opportunity in front of me, and ended up just going to a regular liberal arts college.
Right.
And you were talking about like pretentious artists with the berets and everything.
Right.
My whole experience was like dealing with that, and it killed my love for art for years.
Oh yeah.
And I've only really in the past like 5-10 years picked it back up again. But so anyway, how was let me live vicariously through you. How was your SCAD years? What was that experience like?
It was super awesome. I like to lead when talking about SCAD. I like to lead with, you know, the caveat that a lot of people who also graduated from SCAD really resent it now, because it is expensive, and there's a specific type of person that's going to do well at a school like that. And it's the person that is there to learn how to learn. And unfortunately, the difficulty you get with these expensive specialty schools is you get, you know, for lack of a better term, rich kids who don't necessarily know how to put forth a lot of effort, like they've had easier lives. And again, I don't mean to malign anyone, but that was ultimately the difficulty I saw, you know, with the people that ended up being unhappy with the school. I think they were unhappy with their own performances because they didn't necessarily know from life experience how to really grind the way, you know, an art career requires you to.
Right.
And and you know, it's about if you're there to teach yourself how to learn, not, I already said that, didn't I? It's about if you're going to teach yourself how to learn versus expecting this school to get you a job, you know?
Yep.
And again, that's a very broad generalization, and, you know, no disparity towards many of the very awesome people that also went there and ended up doing really cool stuff. But I initially didn't understand the resentment many of them had. And, you know, even though they turned out well, because I loved it so much. But I think it's also because it was like the first place, I can easily say this, it was like the first place I was happy. You know, I was getting to do what my brain wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was the perfect, you know, scenario at that time. And it worked out so beautifully. And I ended up having a really wonderful time and learning a lot and forging good relationships, good connections. You know, they told me there that, you know, it was about the connections, and I initially didn't believe it, but I've come to see that it's completely true, and I've really benefited from a lot of the people I met at SCAD, and that, you know, continue to follow my career, and that's been a real honor.
So you said that you weren't really a comics person, but you discovered this sequential art program and felt like it was like the perfect gel.
Yeah.
What comics oriented influences did you find, and did you find this during SCAD, or was it maybe before or whatnot that you found that really like kick started, like, ooh, I really want to, you know, work towards that? But okay, so I guess what I'm saying,
I want to be in this world kind of thing.
Yeah, and I know, like, and it was very interesting because in Mother 74 in the end you talk about Otomo being like one of those major influences, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, because I was reading it going, ooh, I see some Otomo influence.
Yeah, yep. The way he handles concrete, I ripped that right off directly. There's all kinds of little things in there.
Because there's weight. That's what your illustration has. A lot of, and my illustrations, like in this same vein, like you don't always feel the weight of the objects that are being represented. I'm not the best at that, but for you, I mean, it is a three-dimensional world with what you could feel how heavy something is, how light something is. Like you're what's the word I'm probably, there's an artistic term for this that I'm missing.
I think weight works. Weight and form, I guess. Yeah. Sounds like. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's mostly shadows.
Which is one thing. Did the school really help you with that sort of thing? So my art school experience was very conceptual, and it was mostly those students that were kind of just doing what the teachers like to see. They would just kind of like, they would just kind of elevate those students rather than teaching actual skills. And that's the one thing I always wondered about SCAD was the actual, like, did you learn, okay, I can now execute shadow because of the skills that I learned in this program?
I mean, it was this is sort of a roundabout approach to the answer, but it was a very practical curriculum, because they have full classes that are like, this is how you write a script. This is how you pitch a script to a publisher. This is how you talk to a publisher. This is how you go out to dinner with a publisher. Like literally they would teach that kind of thing. So it was definitely career oriented. I have heard about those schools where it is very, sort of just theoretical, please the professor, you'll get an A, who cares if this translates to real life kind of thing. And that's another thing I was afraid of going into, an art education. But yeah, they were very practical. And in terms of the actual, technical learning how to draw and all that, what they do is, and I found this very smart. Initially, it felt like we were being shortchanged, but I realized afterwards that it was the right move. What they do is they teach you kind of they teach you steps 1 through 3 of, a 50-step learning curve. But once you get those, you can teach the rest to yourself over time. And art is one of those things that you do need to be aware that you're always growing. There's no such thing as arriving. If your mindset is that you're going to arrive at some point and automatically know how to handle everything and every challenge that could possibly come to you, within any given piece or illustration, then you're thinking about it wrong. It's a constant journey. So I think they imprinted it early on, at least in those of us who, really wanted it, were there for it, that you do have to teach yourself. And here's the starting, the starting line. You have to get to the finish line yourself, because that's how careers work anyway. Yep. We're not going to be here to hold your hand every single time you have to learn something new, which means you're going to have to teach yourself something new, which is how it should be.
Right.
And yeah, I feel like I'm bad-mouthing I feel really bad now that I bad-mouth people, but I genuinely didn't mean it that way. It's just like, it's a difficult thing to get your head around, but once you get it, you have the advantage there. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, I completely get it. I didn't think you were bad-mouthing anyone.
Okay.
Specifically.
Well, edit it out if I sounded mean.
Maybe I'm being naive, but yeah, I didn't hear any bad mouthing. I just felt
Good,
like you
thank
were
you.
just kind of being very practical about. You mentioned earlier how you are a very practical person, and it sounds like a really realistic approach, to the entire process. So,
Well, thank you. I hope so.
It makes sense to me. I kind of skipped over my previous question though. So, what was the first comic or book that you read that you really felt like, oh, okay, that this is like the niche in the medium that I'm really interested in. I imagine, because I'm kind of similar, and I imagine that you're not like a mainstream buff in any way, shape, or form, which is, well, I think something that veers people away from comics. So what are you into?
The first real, like I would say, adult comic that I read, I jumped right in the deep end, man. 19 years old, I picked up Watchmen and read the whole thing. And so you don't you don't get a more rude awakening, but man, was it awesome. And that began for me to be the moment. It's like, oh, comics can be really serious and really silly at the same time, and you can basically do whatever you want. And after that, I started reading Hellboy because of the Del Toro movies that I really loved at the time.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the moment that was like, it was sort of my coming out moment. It's like, no, I have to admit to myself that I do, in fact, want this. I want this,
Yeah. Yeah. Mignola's work on those books are just, again, it's one of those canons that you can put up on a shrine and everybody needs to have in their library.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, there's nothing original about it. Like I just cited like the most famous comic of all time and the other most famous comic of all time, like I haven't met a creator in comics that wasn't heavily influenced by Hellboy at some point. So that's pretty typical. So nothing special about me there.
Yeah, but I think it's one of those things where it's not like because it's just pop or anything. Truly, there's a craft there and a genius at work. It's like Watterson. It's really hard to deny. They got to where they were for a darn good reason. It wasn't just because like somebody in Marvel was just executing the Marvel method and then just got the most like popular style, and I'm kind of referencing some of like the 90s artists and whatnot,
right
and something that was just like hip at the time and zeitgeisty, like these people like Watchmen and Hellboy, and to even talk like Otomo's Akira, which is really only recently an influence on me, funny enough, but those books are long lasting. They weren't just hitting at a particular trend. Those books can be talked about for ages.
Yes.
So
it's one of I don't remember the other ones, but I remember at one point, maybe one of your listeners will know what I'm quoting. The thing where you like remember factoids, but you don't remember where you learned them.
Yeah.
I remember reading one of the qualifiers of great literature is that it rewards rereading. Like it's still good.
Yep.
After you've already read it once, that's for that reason. I also don't really believe in spoilers. Like if it's good in the execution. Yep. Even if I know what's going to happen, the execution is what matters.
Yeah.
And there are exceptions to that, of course. But like, for example, my Mother 47, there's a pretty major spoiler in there, but like most of the time, maybe that means I'm not good at it. I don't know. But most of the time, I'm on the side of like, it's about the execution there. And, if it's good, it will last forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I see what you're saying. I do agree that 100%. So, you're in college.
Mm-hmm.
You are learning the ropes. You're teaching yourself in a way and learning from others. You're networking. What were the steps from getting out of SCAD and into producing in the real world, and what's been your journey since then?
Yeah. So I was ridiculously fortunate because I got work I got work in comics when I was still in my junior year at SCAD, which was exhausting. But I think the reason that happened, well, I know for fact, let me not soften that. The reason that happened was because I had become a very avid social media poster. Like I would just post my art a lot, like multiple times a day, because you're just drawing all the time. That's your homework.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just post a lot. And I wasn't very good then. I cringe about that. But at the same time, I got to bring, all my followers along with me as my following grew. And I was getting eyes on my work. And that's one of the most important things you could do. To this day, I tell people when they're starting out, it's just like, get eyes on it. Like, choose your poison, choose your platform, your social media platform of, whatever's you're most comfortable with, and max that out. Like, be known on there, get stuff up there, get stuff posted, and post regularly, because the point of art is to be seen. And that's how I was first discovered for my first gig. And after that, connections I made during the first gig got me to the second gig. And after that, so that was Shadow Play, the second one. That's available from Scout Comics.
Right.
And then shortly after that, not shortly, I think actually it was probably a while after that. I have a really hard time remembering, the past. But I know roughly the order after that was that after that I did Aftershock, written by Elliot, or I did... wow, I can't talk and draw at the same time.
Aftershock was the company, right?
Aftershock was the company. It was Midnight Vista. I did Aftershock with Elliot Rahal, who remains a dear friend. And what happened after that? And after that, I really got into... I did some short comics after that, some like private ventures. But after that, I really turned a corner, facing again, what I wanted, and started doing self-published stuff. I did Conqueror Worm, I did Mother 47. I kickstarted both of those, and they were both successful. And now Mother 47 and Conqueror Worm have been picked up for publication by Comics Experience Publishing. So years later, it all starts to take form. It starts to pay off. So, the moral of the story is don't be discouraged early on. You never know what's gonna take root.
Comics Experience Publishing. So I actually really have only encountered them when I was doing research on you.
Cool.
So yeah, I had no idea that they existed. Of course, I'm not as well versed in this world yet as a lot of other people are. But
I know more than me. I only know what I'm told at this point.
Well, that's the same with me. I'm too busy being a dad.
There you go.
So I don't see Mother 47 on here, but I see Conqueror Rome on here. Which
it's still coming. It's being it's in the process right now. It hasn't been they haven't picked it up yet. There's a long wind up process to that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I do know the publishing world in that regard.
Yeah.
Takes a while. So Conqueror Worm. Holy shit, this looks beautiful. I'm looking at it right now on my other screen. Oh my God. I need to put this on my Christmas list. Is this a graphic novel, or is it a regular size comic? It looks like $3.99 is kind of the basic.
Yeah, it's a one shot. So that is just I don't even remember how many pages it is. It's 20 something pages. It's a normal length. That was another one of my revelation moments where I was like, I need to just strike out on my own and make comics. But I felt like, and I was so strapped for cash then, I was like broke living on my sister's farm. Basically for free, living, making my way, paying, with chores and stuff. So I felt that I didn't really have time to write something. So the alternative was to, take something in the public domain and adapt it. And the first obvious answer there was this really weird, spooky poem by Edgar Allan Poe that I'd always loved. And I felt like didn't get enough attention. I still think it doesn't get enough attention. Even Poe fans sometimes don't know it. And I went to town on that thing. That was the hardest I'd ever worked on, designing pages. Just wanted to get, the tone just right, the way I'd envisioned it. And it was really fun. And it was my first Kickstarter. So I really learned what a powerful and exhausting tool that is. And the funny thing with that is I almost didn't publish it because the art is old at this point, and I was worried it would misrepresent me. But I guess that turned out to be a false concern.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it now. I don't know what you mean by the art looking old, because it's gorgeous. Did you do the coloring as well?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. So
that's one of the great things about SCAD is they do teach you everything. We had classes on lettering, we had classes on coloring. Even if you're not planning to do that, even if you're fully intending to just be an inker, it's so valuable to understand all the other roles so that you can, it'll change the way you work. Your methods will change accordingly if you're trying to accommodate your colorist or your letterer, things like that. So
right.
We all had, it was a very well-rounded, education on how the entire comics industry works.
Yeah, I'm just now starting to learn that myself, because for the first time I'm working on a project where I have someone else coloring rather than me coloring myself.
Uh-huh.
And it is, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Colorist in particular, it's such a complex thing. Color theory is such elaborate math, and I understand enough of it to, make an aesthetically pleasing page and storytell with the coloring. But some people are so good at this, and it's just it boggles my mind, because color is not something I really understand very well. I've never done, markers or paints or anything like that where you have to color traditionally, because I just don't understand it well enough.
Oh, I'm with you. I have a whole Psychonaut session for that I had with independent artists Sam Sahonis and Sam J. Royale, and we spent almost 2 hours talking color theory, because Sam J. Royale, if you haven't checked out his stuff yet, both Sam Sahonis and Sam J. Royale, they're masters of color, I think. Mm-hmm. And I was really, it was me trying to kind of find a way to learn from them a little bit, and pulling them into a session to talk through it. But I stumble through. They say I do fine, and they're being very generous, but I kind of just stumble my way through coloring, really. It was one of those classes. The only opportunity I had to learn color was in college, and like I told you, it was a studio art program, so it was a painting class, and it was one of those scenarios where the professor was very cliquish with the students, and if you didn't somehow wow the professor right away, you were kind of just left hanging. And
that's sad.
Yeah, so I didn't really have a great opportunity to and I already have issues with color, because I'm not colorblind, but I don't think I see colors correctly the same way as other people do either. I don't understand what colors work well with one another. My wife often has to dress me like baby. It's just weird to me. But when I see something good, I know it's good. So did they teach you digitally only, or did you learn other mediums?
The only coloring class that was more an advanced thing. There was one required digital coloring class that everyone had to take, but I believe there were other coloring classes you could take if you wanted to, move further into it, if you wanted to be a colorist. So I didn't really I may have just made that up. I don't know. It made sense in my head. I'm trying to remember back. It was long enough ago at this point. It's I think that's what happened. But we all had to take a digital coloring class. So mainly what that was, here's what happened. In foundations classes, you're basically drawing one, classes like that. One of them was color theory. So by the time we got to sequential art and we're taking digital coloring, we all had a basic understanding of color theory, and digital coloring class was more helping us understand Photoshop, how to actually use these programs to get the coloring done.
Right. Wow. So I mean, it just, again, just like you said, steps 1, 2, and 3, and then it's all you.
Right. Yeah, very much so.
Well,
it took me a long time to figure that out, but I think I got it now.
Yeah, no. So, Conquer Worm, it looks awesome. That's an item I am putting on my Christmas list right now because I didn't know about that until just now. So that makes me happy. And then Mother 47. So this was a Kickstarter. This was the main book I picked up. And so that I was excited to talk with you about, and it's signed. So I'll be able to put my kids through college someday when I decide to resell it.
Don't hold me to that, please.
It's okay. They're already, 2 of them are already in college now, so it's like we're already passing up on the opportunity.
So I've somehow already done it, and I didn't even know.
Just by owning it. One thing I thought was very interesting when you talked in the back matter of the book about Mother 47, because there's spoilers, and I don't know if I want to get into spoilers because, based upon what you just said too, it's executed in that way that spoilers are not the way it's told. Really sells the entire concept, because you talk about this mode of horror and short stories specifically where the audience isn't being spoon-fed.
Right.
And that really hit me hard whenever you were talking about that, because that's something that's very important to me as a writer and of course illustrator, as a storyteller in general. There's this big thing nowadays where people try to look at plots and plot holes, and everything's got to be tied together in this perfect little package with a neat little bow. It's like everything has to be this elegant delivery of quote unquote plot, the 3-act structure, whatever, which really bugs me because life isn't like that.
Right.
In any way, shape, or form. And it, like you were saying, it makes things, at least for me, it makes things boring. Even the first time watching it, even if you have some kind of twist at the end, it makes the whole thing boring. And I always go to, and please forgive me if you appreciate the filmmaker, that I'm not necessarily knocking. It's just a difference between.
No, go for it.
If you take the difference between 2 filmmakers that I do respect, but Steven Spielberg, which and Terry Gilliam, who I consider genius.
Yeah.
He doesn't hand deliver everything to you. He expects the audience to be somewhat engaged and also to utilize their imagination a little bit. As part of the process of participation. Whereas with Spielberg, you just are, and I'm not knocking him in this way. I'm not trying to knock him down, but you're going to get what you're going to get. It's going to be a perfect package. So Mother 47, you have succeeded wonderfully.
Well, thank you. Spielberg had his moment, and then he fell into kind of a formula. And now he's become just a tone. He's become a story tone, which is fine. It's a good tone. But he only had so many tricks up his sleeve, which to be fair is pretty normal. Like, a lot of the best storytellers only have 1 or 2 real good ones. And there's another of those sayings that I can't remember where I heard it, but has always stuck with me, that, the real auteurs often tell the same story over and over again in different ways. Right. Because it's just inherent, it's part of their DNA, this one story they keep rehashing. So, but that can become boring, I totally agree with you on Spielberg and how his stuff is it's become formulaic and kind of dull now. Yeah.
I mean, and that was just kind of an example to really highlight your work.
Thank you.
And I haven't, to be honest, I've read 1 book of yours. I haven't picked up any of the others. So I've got some catching up to do, but I think you did succeed very well with Mother 47, because part of what it's like, let's take it back to those 2 filmmakers again. And I'm comparing you to one of my favorite artists, but Terry Gilliam, right? You get a lot of the benefit of watching and rewatching his work from this mood that he delivers, and this
Yeah.
tone, and the environment, and the how tangible the characters really are. You know, they're not flat at all,
Right.
and so you definitely establish that mood and that tone from the beginning, to where the heart is kind of like starting that like beat of intensity from fairly quick in the beginning, and then when you start realizing some of the stakes that the main protagonist is going through in this rescue operation, that's about as much as I'm going to talk about in this.
We can talk more about it if you want. If we just say spoiler alert, we can say anything we want about it. I'm fine with that at this point.
I just want people to pick it up. You know, as you know, the story progresses in his rescue attempt, there's all this buildup that starts happening around it that just, you know, it just makes it more and more intense, and you get more and more invested in what's going on. And your art, it reminded me, this is how your art actually reminded me of Otomo, because it wasn't necessarily the detail, but it's that you never let up on the level of intensity of the art at all. And that's one thing I realized with Otomo that made Akira so intense. I literally I watched Akira way back in the day when it first came out, but I never read the comics until just this last year. My wife she got me the entire set.
Nice.
And I read it
for you
in one fell swoop, and it almost exhausted me, because it was just
it's so much.
Yeah. And
I mean, so much
to the every panel having the same level of power and intensity. I mean, if anybody's watching this right now instead of listening to it, if you're watching Clara work, like, you have this, you're not lazy with any panel. Like, you never get a sense in any panel that, like, oh, she's starting to get tired now, or oh, she's ready to just wrap this up. That's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
No, I totally get you, dude. It's that's a big thing for me. I do believe in, you know, doing your best every single panel as much as possible. I've always said to myself, like, you know, if you're in terms of like deadlines and choosing between quality and speed, if you choose speed, you're going to satisfy one person one time, and it'll be whoever is setting that deadline, be it you, your editor, or whatever. If you prioritize quality, you're going to satisfy everyone who sees it forever, and it's going to exist forever. Right. You know, like, it's no contest. And like, there's so much, you know, noise in the comics community about, you know, being able to draw fast and stuff. And it's starting to go away as the industry changes, fortunately. But yeah, I've always been on the opposite side of that. Take your time and do it right.
Yeah, I've actually interviewed a couple people where they have that emphasis on speed. And
sometimes that's okay if that's the kind of thing you're doing. You know, if you're doing a monthly book, you do have to go pretty fast.
Yeah, well, you know, I put myself under pressure with some of those interviews. I have a tendency to feel like everybody's more of an expert than I am, period. So I'm always just trying to take in and absorb and learn, no matter how much I learn on a subject. And I think I just kind of took a lot of that in, and it was even just over the course of this summer. I'm mentioning my wife a lot because she's my brain, but she was like kind of like reinforcing to me, though, of just well, first of all, you're lucky enough that you already have a stable job, and this is what you can do in your spare time. You don't have any hardcore deliverables you have to meet. Like, I'm making comics for myself. And they're on my own. I don't have any particular jobs that I'm working for anyone, and any of the stuff that I have done, it's more freelance. So I can take my time with this, and that's, if you look at I have seen the difference of the stuff that I have just pushed out fast versus the things that I have taken time with. And so you are correct in that. You know, speed can matter, I guess, if you're trying to push out a monthly thing, and if you're trying to just get a large volume of work out there. Quality is very important. And as a person who, for myself, it's important just because it's, you know, I only got so much time in the day that I can actually dedicate to this, and I want to make sure
Right.
it's like good. You know, I want to make sure it is my best with every panel.
Yeah, it needs to be worth your time too.
Yep. So what can we get into your process and materials
Sure.
a little bit? I'm always interested in what other people are using. First of all, when I've seen your videos on Instagram, do you have a standing table? Do you stand up and work?
I do. Here, do you want to see my workspace? I can
Sure.
unclip and show you all what I got here. So
Let me live vicariously through you of having an
This is
actual
the
studio.
glorious mess.
Nice.
So here's my standing desk.
Wow.
I have not one but two anti-fatigue mats down there, so I do take care of my knees.
Right on. Right on.
This is sort of where I keep current projects or things that are sort of in the process. Also up here, I just put in this adhesive magnetic strip with these little magnets on it. This was way more full yesterday. That's usually full of like halfway done stuff.
Yep.
Over here, I usually like to reference my own pencils when I'm inking, just to make sure I knew what I was talking about when I did them, you know?
Oh,
So
right
I'll
on.
usually keep them on the side there for easy access. And this is my whole mess here.
Beautiful.
It's like all my tools. This one I have to replace because my dog chewed it. My inking toothbrushes, like grody old stuff,
Yep.
little ink, all the pens. The ones in the jars are the only ones I really use. The ones back here are mostly dead, but they still have enough life in them to use for like dry brush and stuff.
What pens are you kind of privy to these days?
I mainly use the Zebra Fude double-sided. I don't remember if it's fine or extra fine brush pen, but it's a synthetic brush, but it's very similar to a traditional brush. You can see how fine that tip is.
Oh
And
yeah.
I do a lot of my line work with that, but I also do a lot of texture and dry brushing. And like if there's technical inking, I'll usually use pens. It really depends on what's needed at the moment. It's like I do a lot of texture with like little styrofoam pieces. Here's a sea sponge. That's good.
Yep.
That I had a really good time using this for hair in a recent book. Some traditional brush. But yeah, those are pretty much the main tools. This is always awesome. The white Posca marker for corrections and extractive drawing. I love that, or subtractive drawing rather.
Yeah.
So I love that.
I do like the Posca. The Zebra Feud, is that refillable?
It is not, unfortunately, but it's still a better option than what I was using before, which was the real Kolinsky sable brush, which is made out of endangered weasels. So I feel like I've still taken a step up.
Oh yeah. Wow.
It's an awesome brush. It's just like I found this and I loved this too.
Yeah, I might have to try that. I'm always interested in I'm trying to find the right brush pen for me. I don't feel like I have found it yet. I tried using brushes like just regular brushes, and it's just all over the place with me. I'm not good at taking care of brushes.
Everyone finds different things.
Yeah.
Traditional brush is a whole thing. It's a whole other thing that's like if it doesn't necessarily come naturally, it may not be the right path. But
Right.
I may be making that up for all I know. That's just how it worked for me.
Yeah, I'm fine with doing it if I know there's a part of what I'm working on that can be pretty experimental, and I know it can be a little messy, and if I'm doing like a trippy psychedelic sequence or something. But if I'm like, I see you're working on a very technical drawing right now, and I am as well, because I'm working on somebody holding a firearm.
Yeah.
And your tools have got to be really precise.
Yeah.
Work with what you know for that sort of thing. But yeah, just right now I'm working with most generally just like the regular Pentel brush pen, which
that's a good one.
It's all right. It's just interesting because every time you get a new one, it does have refills, but every time you get a new one or even add a refill, the brush sometimes just works a little differently.
It changes the personality.
Yeah, so it's like I almost have to like relearn it each time. And there's another one I was going to be using. I talked to Steve McCardle about
I mean,
a month ago.
For what it's worth, that happens with traditional brush too. Like everyone is a tiny bit different. You have to learn their personalities. Like, what's this brush going to be like?
Right. Yeah, it's actually kind of part of the fun process of art creation. Really,
it
it's
is
just trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, and evolving and growing with it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So it looks like that you're drawing it out and then you're copying it in Blue Line.
Yeah. So I scan in the pencils, which you saw earlier here.
Mm-hmm.
And I convert them to Blue Line, 40% cyan in Photoshop, and print them out on my inking board. And that way there's no loss. You don't ink over your own pencils. So you still have those at the end. And I just find it a lot safer, and I'm just a lot more comfortable with it. And, if you pencil the way I pencil, your page is all dented too. So it just gets messy and difficult to ink on. Blue Line is a pretty standard approach that actually a lot of us ended up using it at art school too. Like, we were actually taught how to do that. So, and there are still plenty of people that enjoy like light boxing and stuff. This is just what I find works best for me.
Yeah. Just watching your work here, just fascinated. Yeah, I haven't done that yet. I haven't printed out my pencils to ink. I just ink directly on. So you said you push pretty hard. Are you using Bristol board, or what do you draw on normally?
Let's see. I have them right down here for somewhere. For penciling, I usually use Strathmore Bristol with the vellum surface, so just lightly textured. For inking, I usually prefer more texture. So this is like the 400 series, so it's denser vellum surface, so that's a little bit more textured. So that's what I have right here. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I use, is that initial Strathmore that you put up, the 11
the
by
yellow
14,
one.
11 by 14 is my page size as well. So
cool.
It looks like that you're not. Are you? How do you kind of measure out your margins whenever you're drawing on that? Do you just to fit on a regular comic size page? Do you give yourself about an inch thick space, or?
Well, it depends on what the intended goal is for it. I mean, if I'm using my printer that I prefer for my self-published books, I use their specs. But if you're working for an editor, they give you the specs, they'll tell you, and then I'll make a template based on that. So every version of the page that I do is to the correct proportions, although if not the correct size.
Right.
If that makes sense. Yeah. As long as it's properly scalable. Yeah, I just reuse the same templates for every stage of the drawing.
Excellent. So when does Mother 47 come out from CEX?
I do not know. I don't have a good answer for that. I know they're putting a preview out in their next solicitations, but I'm not sure when that's happening either. So I don't have a good answer for that. Sorry.
No, I know that game too.
Yeah.
There's no problem. So what is, can you get into what you're working on in the future? What can we see from Clara Meath in the future?
Currently I have a stack of things I have to get through first, but I'm working on 2 scripts right now, one for a longer project that'll probably still be shorter than Mother 47, but my next Kickstarter book. And prior to that, I'm planning on doing a short little mini comic for similar reasons that I fell into for when I did Conqueror Worm, which is just like, I need a project and I don't really have time to write something. So I'm revamping a piece of flash fiction, that I wrote in high school. It's like a Orwellian sci-fi story, just a short little piece, sort of surreal. So I'm optimistic that'll at least be very visually interesting and keep it short and give me pages, because I get a craving, like if I haven't worked on storytelling pages, interiors for long enough, it gets really bad. So I have to come up with, I need to be better at, scheduling myself so that I always have something ready to go when one project ends, which is the situation I got myself in this time. There's no project to start. So that's the goal with that, is to get better at writing and the next project while working on the current project.
Right. So is what you're working on now part of this flash fiction piece, or the...
No, this is a pinup for Magnetic Press's Black Box Chronicles, which is just an anthology sci-fi series. So these are all sort of characters from the different stories. Try to get creative with the pinup, and sort of focus on a broader concept of the anthology rather than focus on one story.
Nice. Well, we'll look forward to everything. You gotta let me know when that Kickstarter is coming out, or push it out on your social medias, and we'll throw people your way for sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, 100%. So in terms of social medias, where can people find you?
Instagram is the best. You can also find me on Facebook. Instagram is Clara_Meath. It's my little CM logo, so it's hard to miss. And Facebook, I have a Facebook art page called The Art of Clara Meath, I believe. And those are the main ones.
You don't have a website. It's just mostly Instagram and Facebook, correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, just checking.
I'll probably have a website someday, but right now I'm not letting it bother me.
I don't know that having a website has helped me out a ton.
Yeah.
So that's
kind of the thing now, right?
Yeah. So you just kind of have to watch how things trend, and mostly it's the social medias that kind of help in a way. But awesome. Well, we're kind of at that hour mark, so I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. It's been fun watching you. I've been trying to not just drool over watching you draw and keep to my own and try to finish my own thing, but it's been really cool watching you at work.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I appreciate your time too. Oh, look how red I am. That's how that's the talking awkwardness as I get really red.
Oh no, that's cool. Again, it was really cool watching you work and working with you. It's always a fun experience for me. And again, thank you so much for what you've produced, because
thank you.
It's excellent work. Everybody go out there and search out. Can people hit you up to get copies before it comes out on CEX, or?
Yes, they can. Yeah.
All right.
If you hit me up on social media, we can do a PayPal purchase and I'll get it sent to you.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Any convention appearances coming up soon?
I'm going to be in Wichita next month, but I don't remember if there's anything else after that. Yeah, nothing big lined up.
Cool. Yeah, convention season's kind of winding down, getting ready for the holidays. So
yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Clara. Really appreciated having you on, and maybe we'll have you on again sometime whenever you have some more projects out. It'll be cool to chat again. And thanks a lot, everybody out there. Stay safe and keep it psycho.
You too.